Morning, councillors, CEO, directors. Ladies and gentlemen, the traditional custodians of the land on which we're privileged to meet, the Yuwi people, represent a human link in our region dating back around 60,000 years. We pay our respects to the traditional custodians and honour their elders past, present and those emerging, and recognise their continuing connection to our land and our community. So, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is being streamed live and recorded and published in accordance with the Council's bylaws. Welcome to our online audience. Welcome also to the members of the public gallery. By attending a public meeting of Council, you are consenting to your image and your voice being recorded and published. And I'm required to tell you that you may be subject to legal action if your actions or comments are deemed inappropriate or unacceptable. I'm sure they won't be. So thank you and welcome. I declare the meeting open. To lead us in prayer today, Father James Izioka and Sister Lila's here too. So Sister, it's great to see you. Father James.
Good morning, Paul. Prayer for guidance and inspiration for the Mackay Regional Council. We pray. God of all creation and mercy, you are indeed the giver of all gifts. Our Mackay Regional Council come together on this day, the 24th of February, to seek your wisdom, your guidance, courage, and strength. Be with them in their deliberation and help them to be wise in the decisions they make for the good of all those who have placed their trust and confidence in them. Give the council insight to continue to lead with integrity, that their decisions may reflect what is right and good. Help them to make decisions that continue to be for the good of all people. Dear God, grant them wisdom to always seek you and seek your will in all that they do and say. And above all, as they labor to build our community, we ask you to watch over their families, keep their families safe, and bless their families. Knowing and being reassured that many of our communities and our community hold them to our hearts with respect, with gratitude, with confidence, with the knowledge that their voice and leadership represent us, as together we build our community to be the best it can be. We make these prayers through your Son who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father James. Well done, thank you. Move on, there's nobody absent on council business. We do have an apology from Councillor Bonaventura, who's not feeling the best today, so in accordance with the COVID regulations, he's not attending. Somebody would like to move that leave of absence be granted to Councillor Bonaventura. Moved by Councillor Jones, seconded by Councillor Englert. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried, thank you. Condolences, Councillor Mann.
Thank you. Your Worship, I was honoured to be asked by library staff via their director to speak about the passing of Chris Dunbar, and I ask that we pass on condolences of council to Katrina and family. So the words I'm going to read are from the library staff, and as we know, in council there's people that have a longevity in different programs, and workmates tend to become like family as well. So the passing of Chris has deeply affected our library staff, and our thoughts are with them. So it's with great sadness that we advise long-term library staff member Katrina Dunbar's husband Chris has sadly succumbed to his long-running battle with cancer. Katrina and Chris were worthy recipients of the 2020 staff Christmas party fundraising, which allowed them to spend some quality time together as a family over the past 2 months. With the love and support of Katrina, his 2 sons Bailey and Cody, family and friends, Chris fought valiantly to overcome this terrible disease, but unfortunately recovery was not to be, and Chris has now gained his angel wings. We acknowledge that this is a difficult time for Katrina and her family, and we know the library and extended council family will rally to offer much love and support to them during this very sad time.
Thanks, Councillor Mann. And we'll certainly endorse that and pass our condolences as an elected body. Any further condolences? No further condolences. Conflicts of interest? Any conflicts of interest to declare today for the day's meeting? None, thanks, councillors. Move on. 7.1 is the confirmation of minutes of the meeting of the 10th of February. Somebody like to move that they be adopted? Councillor Mann moves, Councillor Green seconds. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. We had an update of the minutes of the 27th of January. There was an amendment to item 15, public participation. That's been circularised. I think there was any questions that came back from that. Somebody like to move that the confirmation of the amended minutes then on the 27th of January be adopted. Councillor Jones moves, Councillor Hassan seconds. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Thank you. We've been not notified of any business out of the previous minutes. There's no Merrill minutes today. So let's move on then. The consideration of committee reports and recommendations. 10.1 is the local disaster management group minutes. Pretty well self-explanatory. Are there any questions? No questions for that. We might note that VMR has now been asked to join the Mackay Local Disaster Management Group, which I think was a good addition. So we'd like to move. Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Englert. Councillor May.
Just very quickly, Your Worship, 2 things that I'd like to add to drawing out of the minutes there. VMR was one that you mentioned, but the NBNCO emergency disaster satellites that have been installed, one here at the MEC and one down in Serena, to aid us when we're dealing with a disaster if we lose that connectivity. So that will be of great benefit to us. And of course, just to bring the community's attention to the training register, which forms part of the local disaster group's responsibilities, to make sure that all of the members that sit around the table are doing the required training to be in a position to be making those decisions in time of disasters.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.2, the draft minutes of the Character and Heritage Advisory Committee. That committee met on the 5th of February. Minutes are there. Any questions? Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. So we had a jam-packed meeting and we didn't get through everything, unfortunately. There was just too much on the agenda. We did offer thanks to Tabitha Ricks for stepping in and picking up when we didn't have a strategic plan after Dylan left. We did have Kylie Rogers and Stacey come along and talk about the PDAC and the actions there, which was really good for all our committee to hear. Volunteers were asked to finalise what they want to work on for the 2021 year. We had already decided on 2 projects and we just needed to decide on a 3rd, and there was lots on the table for decision, but we did come to a decision, and volunteers have offered their time very, very freely to work on these projects in response to, I guess, lack of resources in that area, but that's something they're very passionate about and they want to be involved. We did have discussion about the Pioneer Valley Driving Trail, where there was some confusion raised in the December meeting about where it ends. The committee felt that they didn't think that there was any confusion. Moroney is part of the Pioneer Valley. There will be a further trail or further options added to that once we develop the mountain biking further. But this was again a lack of resources, and we just felt that was a good place to stop it at this point, and we can continue it on. It's really, actually, it was pleasing to hear too that there's 19 views a day at least on the City Centre Heritage Trail, which is really good numbers. So it's been very well received, and business owners reporting that people are actually stopping in at points and having a cup of coffee or talking about the fact that they're on the Heritage Trail. So that's really good. the Piney Valley Heritage Trail will be launched officially in Heritage Month, so that's really exciting. There is recommendations out of the meeting, and that is about the events that we wish to host in the Heritage Festival in 2021, and there's a whole number, so I'm not going to go through them all, but there is actually 10 events that we'd like to host, and again, all volunteer-led, so I'm very grateful that the volunteer committee have such buy-in with this committee.
Thanks, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.1, the Office of the Mayor and CEO reports, as far as our correspondents and officers reports now. CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. The strategic financial report is in the pack. I wasn't going to talk to that, given that the budget reforecast exercise we have gone through. So I was proposing sort of holding over any comments to the budget review discussion.
Okay, questions for the CEO around the report? No questions? Somebody like to move the report? Councillor Jones moves. Councillor May seconds. Councillor Jones? Okay, I'll put the report to the table. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. The budget review, 11.1.2, CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we've run through our budgeting reforecasting process in December. So that's leading to a number of adjustments to the budget. The highlights are there is an increase in revenue of about 1.7 million. That's spread across a number of categories, but there is additional grant funding in there, which is one of the main drivers, but a number of small changes. In relation to the expenses, depreciation is down. So councillors might remember that at the time where the previous budget was being reset, we were going through an asset revaluation issue. As a result of that revaluation, depreciation has come down. And in lieu of that sort of depreciation coming down, with the COVID, we deferred a number of studies and some activities. So we're now seeing things like some of the recruitment is progressing now, where there's a bit of a freeze on that. And we are progressing with a number of studies that we were deferring. So that's sort of a very high-level overview of some of the increases and decreases, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, CEO. Questions for the CEO, Councillor Mann?
So in terms of capital projects, there was an amount of 173,000 where some expenses were changed from CapEx to OpEx, and I just wondered what types of expenses needed to be reclassified, and was our original scope for the project correct?
CEO.
Yes, as part of the ongoing adjustments, there are often small adjustments. So, for example, where we do a bit more design, or as we go through a review at the end of projects, and we look at the accounting guidelines, and there's frequently small adjustments. So, I would suggest that we're not getting it right. It's just a natural course of things. I will also just comment on overall the CapEx program. It's sort of set out in here, so there's certainly a focus on the overall CapEx program, given that COVID and for other reasons a number of things have moved out, and again we're bringing forward from through to future years a number of the projects as well, which is reflected in the paper.
Councillor Jones. Sorry, do you have another one?
I do have another one too. In the expenses, the amount of 225,000 Office of Mayor and CEO for external advisors and organisational review, and I just wondered what we were actually, so what were the external advisors used for, and is the organisational review for the whole of council?
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. So in that category, there's things like we've carried out a KPMG report where we've had a bit of an overview of our risk, our processes, and some of our accounting sort of treatments. So that was one of the exercises. The other is that we've conducted a number of workshops with senior staff and feedback, and that's the budget where we've also done some workshops with councils as well to start looking at some of that strategic view of what's going ahead. There is some money in there for some future work, which is more around what are some of the best practice processes out there, so we can start bridging the gap from where we are to some of those best practice processes. So that's what's in that bucket.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. I noted on page 43 that there was the mention of our fourth year payment to Mackay Tourism, 340,000, and that's used to promote our region, which is great. And also today, yourself and councillors, including myself, attending the Mackay Tourism launch of their latest marketing campaign. In the speech that you did, you mentioned that the marketing campaign cost $100,000, and I was just curious if we can find out how much of that was spent within our region and with our locals.
That's not for this table. You can probably ask that question.
Thank you.
But if you've got a question around the actual, what we're dealing with right now, rather than a question around
I guess it was
the
more
tourism
about,
body's expenditure, that's the tourism body.
well, we fund the tourism.
We don't
body.
fund the tourism body, we contribute to the tourism body.
Well,
Our contribution to the tourism body is matched by the state government. And then there's also a number of other project-driven funds that they derive funding from as well. So,
well, if you tell me the avenue I need to go down to be able to find that information out, I'd be more than happy to follow that up.
you can write to the Tourism Authority or go and see Taz.
No worries. Thank you, Your Worship.
Right. Any further questions? Councillor Bello.
My question is that I note that in the executive summary of the strategic financial report, we forecast a deficit of 5.024.
What report are you in, Councillor Bello?
I'm talking about the previous one to give reference to this.
Right.
$5.024 million deficit, yet in the budget reforecast, we talk about a 4.9 budget deficit. $124,000 in some people's eyes is a small thing, but in mine, when it follows from one report to the other, I'd like to know why there's a discrepancy of that magnitude. My other question is the deficit, operating deficit that we have, where are we sourcing the finance from that? Is it coming from our cash reserves, or is it going to be through further borrowings?
So in relation to the first part of your question, the bridge between what's in the first paper and the second is the figures on the right, so that's setting up a bridge. And then in relation to the second part of your question, no, we're not doing any further borrowings, so we have cash at bank.
Cash reserves?
Cash reserves.
Could I get a little bit of elaboration? Like, it's clearly stated in that first one that the current forecast is 5.024, and in the very next item we get that 4.9. Like, I just don't see how a strategic report and then the very next item can show that discrepancy. It's either one or the other.
So no, so we're adjusting the figure in the first paper by all the items that are listed in the second paper.
So
Which then
we are
brings us
not
back to the
currently
4.9
projecting
deficit.
5.02, so that statement there is incorrect.
Well,
No, it's not incorrect, Councillor Bello. That's a strategic report in the first one, and the strategic report forecast then 5.9. As the CEO had said, this actual the budget review. This is the document, and this document then there says we're going to get it down to below 5 for these reasons. The strategic report is not a set of accounts. This is the set of accounts this is the document that will make the most impact on the set of accounts. You cannot say that what's in the strategic report, which says if everything goes this way, we'll end up with a $5.9 million deficit. What we've got now is a December budget review that says it's not going to be that. This is the way we're going to get it down to below 5.
It's interesting you said that I said it, because I didn't. I merely asked the question as to why there was the discrepancy. Thank you.
Right. Okay. CEO, is there anything? No, that's it. That's enough. Thank you. Is there anything further
Asked
for
for
the
it to be
CEO?
explained.
Thank you.
Is that not my role?
It is. So we just want to
Thank
make sure
you.
that everybody
Thank you.
understood. So, is there any further questions for the CEO? Councillor May.
Just in regards to the expenses, the employee benefits, I see there's an increase of $1.1 million roughly there. I'm just wondering how that's come about and had we understated the employee expenses in previous budget?
No, we hadn't. So some of that is that we're projecting that some of the staff hiring that we had planned to do but Corona had interrupted, we're now moving forward on, and there are some adjustments in there to wages for existing staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No further questions. Somebody like to move the December 2020 budget review be adopted? Councillor England moves, Councillor Jones seconds. Councillor England.
I think enough's been said, Your Worship.
Okay, put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. The Development Services 11.2.1, Development Services Monthly Review for January 2021. So, Director.
Thank you, and thank you for considering the Development Services Monthly Review Report for January. I wanted to start by mentioning a great deal of work that's happening at the moment within the Parks Environment Sustainability Program, which isn't actually reflected in the report. So in January, park staff worked extremely hard to get on top of all the grass and park maintenance work arising from the wet weather that the region received to start for Christmas. This is always a battle this time of year to get on top of things, but the team have done an excellent job in the circumstances. Changing tack, a lot of work has also been occurring on the Northern Beaches Community Hub project. Staff have been continuing to work to refine the concept master plan, so building options and infrastructure options for the site. A community reference group and agency reference group have been formed for the project, and these groups met for the first time yesterday. The Mackay City Waterfront project is progressing well with detailed design of the Riverside Public Realm upgrades and the River and Sydney Street intersection upgrades nearing completion. We are also continuing to progress the EOI process that Council has initiated for the development opportunities on Council land in the priority development area, with further discussions with EOI respondents for New Mackay and sectional occurring in February. Repairs and refurbishment of approximately 50 park amenity buildings is underway, funded through Works for Queensland COVID-19 funding. The works being undertaken include plumbing, carpentry, floor resurfacing and painting. Work has been undertaken on a Hooked on Mackay marketing campaign to coincide with the opening of Barramundi season. Council's economic development team will be working with local fishing celebrities on an ambassador campaign, which will involve the celebrities each creating an original Mackay region fishing video. Moving on to the Sugar Shed, a new ticketing system has been implemented at the Sugar Shed called Ticket Search. This is the same system that is used at the MEC, and it will improve the process for issuing tickets for Sugar Shed tours. So with that, I would like to present this report to Council for consideration and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Questions for the Director, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was pleased to see on page 58 that we have installed the brass sign at Lambert's Beach. I'm fairly sure last year, correct me if I'm wrong, we also did one at Slade Point Reserve, wasn't it? So I was just curious if, and Director can take it on notice, what the total cost of those two signs were. Two other questions, Your Worship. One is on page 68, so the Blue Water Key Improvements. I'm just wanting to check that we're going to be DDA compliant, which I know that our organisation is, but last year we were also spoken about best practice standards that the Director and I have and other councillors have spoken about. So I was just wanting to know whether or not any best practice standards were being looked at for that work. And on page 75, in relation to the internal digital infrastructure working group, it being an internal group, I would assume that there isn't any councillor on that, but I was wondering if I could get a copy of the minutes to have a look at that.
Okay, certainly. So we take the first one and the Director will take that on notice and get back to you.
Yep.
On the costs.
Your Worship, I can answer that now.
All right, please.
Okay, so the actual plaque itself cost $1,199 to be exact. The stand cost $1,408, so that's the Lambert's Lookout one. The Slade Point one was a similar cost. I think the brass plaque was slightly cheaper, around the same cost, and both signs were installed by Natural Environment staff.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much.
And in terms of the second question,
Water key?
on, what was your second question again?
Just wanting to know if, I know that we do DDA
Oh, yeah, so
compliance stuff.
the standards. I mean,
Yeah, so
Obviously.
absolutely, Your Worship, it will be DDA compliant and, yeah, we're definitely, making sure that we adopt best practices approach to accessibility as part of that project.
Wonderful, wonderful.
and the last question on page 75.
Which was the minutes. if
The
I
minutes,
can get a
and
copy.
I'm sure we can get those too.
Yeah, Your Worship, there were no minutes, so the first two meetings have really been about setting up that internal working group and have just been discussions amongst staff to that end, and also to achieve a level of familiarity with the overall project, which is this is all part of the DW3 commissioned digital infrastructure study, so bringing the relevant staff up to speed with that and then working out who's best to be on that group. So they haven't actually started capturing minutes because we haven't actually got into a proper meeting cycle just yet.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, further questions? Councillor England.
Thank you, Worship. There was a dog bite on the hand after rescuing a small dog that was drowning in the Botanic Gardens lagoon. If it was up to me, Your Worship, that dog would have required a second rescue, but I'm curious how our employee and the dog are faring.
Can you answer that one, CEO?
I might point
Back
that
to the Director. Thank you, Director.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Yeah, it was a heroic action by our staff member to retrieve the dog, and the dog wasn't so grateful and did not as a result, but both are doing fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Worship.
Further questions? No further questions. Somebody like to move the report's adoption, please. Councillor England moves, Councillor Mann seconds. Councillor England.
Thank you, Worship. As the Director mentioned, the staff have done an amazing job at catching up with the wet weather recently. Unfortunately, the projection is for more wet weather come this weekend, but I'll deal with that as it comes. The Director mentioned about the work down at River Street is moving ahead really well, and we look forward to seeing an end of that and work starting on the public realm there. We've had people in town discussing the potential of starting up the beach horse races again. I think it's the way we're approaching it is a really thoughtful way of looking to ensure that there is potentially something that happens in this region that happens nowhere else, and to make sure that if we go that way, that it has longevity and self-sustainability. There is just a reminder that that the entire report, as usual, all in the green except for that annoying little part out of the botanical gardens with the weeds. Well, I think we'll be behind for some time as a result of our little hiccup at the beginning, but otherwise an excellent report. And I'll just point out that the next thing that we've got on our things to do list is on the 16th to 17th of April, we've got our free native plants giveaway, and that's always well received. And then on the 1st to 3rd of May at the Great Barrier Reef Merino Stadium, we've got the Bash for Cash as part of our Investment Mackay funded things that we do. So good report, thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor England. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Jones speaking for.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make note that in the January report, the Natural Environment Nursery received its accreditation for 2021, and that was under the Nursery Industry Accreditation Scheme. So the scheme is independently audited for best management practice and for nursery production. So I just think that we're very lucky to have a nursery like that in our region, and I thank the staff for working to that level to be able to achieve that type of accreditation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.2.3, the Environmental Sustainability Strategy 27. What have I got?
Camping
Going
analysis.
camp. Oh, right, okay. 11.2.2. Any trouble changing the pages? Mackay Regional Camping Analysis report the reduction of yields and charges for the camping reserves, fees and charges for the camping reserves at Ball Bay and St Helens Beach. Are there questions for this? It's pretty well straightforward, isn't it? No questions? Someone like to move the report's adoption. Councillor Mann moves. Councillor Jones seconds. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. Look, as per the report, the camping industry has been recognised as a major contributor to the Australian tourism industry, and I think we as a council recognise there's an opportunity in our region to capture a greater share of that growing market by enhancing what we offer to campers. And it's my opinion the camping analysis was a logical step for us in the process of formulating a camping and RV strategy. So EarthCheck was engaged by Council in 2019 to provide a holistic view of what we offer, and in terms of 4 locations. And unfortunately, St Helens Beach and Ballway camping reserves were found to be lacking really, and were classified as basic camping sites. The survey conducted indicated that consumers felt that they didn't represent good value for money, and value for money is a significant criterion when people are deciding where to go and camp. I just see that a reduction in the fees makes good sense, and I certainly support it.
Okay, so thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Jones speaking for?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I also note that the outcome of this report, that Ballway and St Helens campground will now have the reduced fees, which is really great for our community and any of our visitors. I certainly look forward to seeing the targeted marketing activity and the outcome of that in future reports.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.2.3. Now we can do the Environmental Sustainability Strategy 2017-2022. This was the one that we tabled a month ago, and the motion then was to lay it on the table for a month. There has been some changes to it. Are there questions? No questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption then for the strategy review? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. As you said, this was laid on the table at the last, or a couple of meetings ago, for a look at some of the wording that was in the strategy, and that's since been updated. Council has had a number of briefings on this strategy. We have also briefed our Sustainability and Environment Advisory Committee on the strategy as well as emails being circulated to the council. So I think what we've got here is the interim review has been conducted in an open and transparent manner. We've included our Reef Guardian Action Plan as part of this strategy now. It has always been, we've always had a Reef Guardian Action Plan, but it's just sat outside of the strategy. So we're pulling it all in so that we've got all of the environmental sustainability in the one place, that officers can be able to manage that going forward.
Thanks. Councillor May, speaker against? Are there any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. So let's move on to our ECI reports. 11.3.1, the ECI report for transport and drainage for the month of January. Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. So pleasing to see no LTIs again for January, and pleasing to see also that the number of incidents over the last 4 months have been trending down in civil operations. Obviously this report reflects January, so a wet month for us, so a lot of the time was spent focusing on reactive work around flooded roads, pothole repairs, and obviously being a little short-staffed over that period with Christmas break. So there is a little bit of backlog of planned works, but we'll work to get on top of that. Most of the work was probably prioritised on TMR roads, obviously, who had more of an impact with the traffic flows around our RMPC contracts. There's really good results on the customer surveys for November and December, so you can see that they're continuing to trend in the right areas, and you will note that we've expanded on the asset management reporting now as part of the report. So breaking that down into areas of focus which are around data cleanse, maintenance management system rollout for programs, the WIP or works in progress and capitalisation process, and obviously the valuation process to make sure that we're on top of that going into next year when we do water and sewage valuation. I'm not happy to take the question.
Thanks, Director. Questions for the Director? Councillor Mann.
Just around a couple of the safety incidents. So hitting objects with part of the body and exposure to heat requiring medical treatment. I just wondered if I could get a bit more information.
Okay, Director.
Yeah, Your Worship, we have to take that on notice and come back to
You happy with that?
Council.
We'll circulate that as always to all the councillors, Director. Thank you.
Can I just have one more? So I'm just wondering why each directorate isn't reporting safety the same. So in development services, for example, it gives a summary of how many interactions were undertaken. Like first page on safety is that summary, and I'm just wondering if we could have that for all
standardised reporting, CEO.
Yeah, because it's very handy to know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
CEO, I'll take that on board.
Thank you.
Good point. Further questions? Councillor Seymour.
What I wanted to ask the question too is, you know, with the rotary sealing and that, I've noticed a lot of places they repatch at patches all the time, so especially on that Wallingford Road, they're doing it now. The patches they've marked to replace are patches from previous, in such times that they're going to be like dug out and reclaimed properly.
So is there a reason? Okay, Director.
Yeah, through your worship. We'll probably have to have a look at it. Is that after the patching's been done or in preparation?
The original patches are marked. When they go back to repair them, they're repairing the same patches, the same way. So
Through your worship, there is a little bit of pre-work we do. So if there is some sort of failure in pavement, we'll go out and do the pre-work, and then before the reseal program comes over and seals that on top of it. But I'll check that out, particularly the road out.
Maybe you can take it up with Councillor Seymour offline to know exactly what he's talking about.
yeah.
Okay. Further questions? No further no further questions? No. Okay. Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves. Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. Look, I'd like to highlight safety too in the department. So it is a high-risk area, as a lot of other areas of council, and minimal incidents, which is really good to see. So I'm really pleased that, you know, in January, where people's focus may not be as sharp coming back from leave, that people are very, very mindful of safety. There was a high number of maintenance activities around, especially signage, potholes and footpath repair. So there's been a lot of work completed. There was disruption to unsealed road maintenance network, but that was because of the rain and the wet weather and personnel being on leave. So they're all understandable as well. And again, open drainage maintenance was impacted by the wet weather as well. I would like to mention the client survey results too, so overwhelmingly positive, which is a very good reflection on our staff and the way they go about doing what they do. And asset management, I noticed, you know, just how much more information that we have, and it's a really big focus for council. It's important work that we do, so I'm very appreciative of the extra information that we've received and that the challenges that the program is experiencing with resources as well.
Thanks, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bella speaking for?
I was going to cover this in the budget review, but I was not given the opportunity. It is directly relevant to this report. However, in the budget review, there was a comment about $32,000 being saved on royalties for gravel. Now, initially I found that alarming in that I wondered whether we had decreased the amount of gravel we were putting on roads and whatever. On inquiry, it turns out to be quite a good news story in that this is due to us apparently accessing gravel at commercial quarries that are closer and more appropriate to the jobs we're doing. This is something that council historically has been criticised for, you know, driving past one job to get to another. And I think this is a wonderful indicator of the fact that as a rule we don't. We do have our eye on commercial reality and to access more appropriate material closer to the job and to actually make a saving in doing so, I think is a very well done job. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. So the ECR report for waste services. Is that the next one?
Thank you, Your Worship. So you'll see a large increase in the number of bins that were repaired and replaced. So it does sort of correspond to the holiday period, although it is up from the previous reporting period of last year. So we believe that's probably a little bit around the COVID impacts and people being more at home and not being able to travel. But it's good to see those assets are being replaced. Again, great results in relation to this bin. So 47 instead of 270,000. So fantastic effort from the operator there, JJ Richards. Volunteer hours at Incredible are now above 2,000 hours, which is fantastic. There was a query about where those volunteers come from and do we source them through an agency. We don't, so they're just people that are quite incredible to actually work, so that's fantastic to see. Really pleasing to get a couple of major contracts awarded to Golder Associates, which we do with the leachate and stormwater at Hope Pocket, and obviously then our legacy landfill. So interesting to see how those information comes back to council. You will note that the MRF is receiving a lot more tonnages due to the issue of a fire at Rockhampton, so we're receiving their recoverable materials, so probably will continue for another 6 months or so, but good collaboration that we're able to take that in and support our neighbouring councils. And the tonnages of Hogan Pocket, again, are interesting. Municipal is trending up, so over the last 3 months, but we probably need some more data to see if that's a continuing trend over the last period of time. And the last reference I'll make is around dump vouchers. So redemption rate's a little bit down compared to the period we see. So we've about 5 weeks to run on the current validity period, so down at 22.6. So yeah, people encouraged to obviously use those dump vouchers in the last 5 weeks.
Thank you, Director. It was a good report to read, actually. And are there questions for the Director around this report? No, it was great to read. And thank you. Can you pass on to your staff our appreciation for our Council of Community Day, where we did all of the waste tour, and that was very, very well received. It was great to see the operation. Very professional. Thanks very much. Somebody like to move? Councillor Jones moves. Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sure if Councillor Bonaventura was here today, he would certainly mention the dump vouchers, and he would ask that the community consider utilising them to their best ability, being that they will run out in 5 weeks, and it's a wonderful resource that we have and that we give back to our community. I just wanted to make mention also on page 202. So the community have previously asked me about recycling polystyrene, and it's really great to see that we're looking at a viability assessment, and I'm certainly going to be keen to see what the outcome of that is. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Speaker against? Any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.3.3, the ECR report for water. Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, happy to report no LTI, so this area that water was recognised for its service levels around safety issues, so it's great to see that continue. Water consumption obviously very much impacted from the rain in January and dropped below our targets for the first time in a long time, but obviously given the warmer weather in February, that's started to pick up again. Continue to obviously chase up leak notifications to those registered on MyH2O and those not. So again, a focus for us. Been doing some work around midpoint water supply. So as per the briefing to council, even though the current water quality issues are settled, there's obviously some planned work to do some major cleaning of the mains, and obviously there's some work around the reservoir with the intake there. So that's going ahead as forecast. You will note that in the last month we had a couple of test results positive for COVID treatments in our sewage treatment plants. So we regularly test those on a weekly basis, and both Mackay South, which probably represents most of the urban area, and Mackay North came up positive in one test, but the following week and so on. So it probably indicates that was a person passing through, and it's probably more of an indication that someone that's potentially had COVID historically, so not necessarily active at the moment. Another issue to probably raise is that we picked up some chromium and nickel in our biosolids, so obviously that changes the classification and use, so we've been doing a fair bit of work trying to trace that back. So we've been working with our trade waste officers to try and find and identify that. Generally the focus probably has been more around hydrocarbons as an issue, so this is a little bit of a change in focus, but pleasing to say the results we've got come back in more recently show that it has actually fallen back down into normal levels. And again, the customer survey results are obviously a highly reactive program, but great to see that continue to achieve outstanding results there. So I'm happy to take it.
Thanks, Director. Questions? Councillor May.
Just in regards to the water leaks, Director, I'm just wondering, I know we track the number of leaks and the length of days that they're leaking. Do we actually track the amount of water that we're losing out of the system as a result of those leaks?
Yeah, through Your Worship, we should be able to, because we obviously monitor the leak, so we get a detail and the calculation gives us a leakage rate, so we probably can correlate that back to an amount of water that's actually has been leaking from residents. But we haven't done that.
Through you, Your Worship, I'm just wondering whether that's something worthwhile to track in the reports, and depending on how much work's involved in doing that, I'm happy to leave it for some consideration.
We'll leave that with the Director. You might come back to us with the yay or nay, depending on the amount of work, Director, involved in that. But it would be interesting to know what our leaks are costing, well, not costing us, but what our leaks.
How much water we're wasting or losing out of the system.
Depends on what we can do with that information. Then.
Your Worship, that's a customer side, so obviously the customer's paying for that water, but we can go and do a calculation around the volume of water per week, and then sum that up to a total.
Okay. Further questions, Councillor England?
Just out of curiosity around the chromium issue, do we believe that that's more of a domestic, commercial or other scenario?
No, Director?
Yeah, through Your Worship, we're still looking at it. We believe it's coming potentially from commercial operators. So again, it's probably been a lower volume trade waste generators that we haven't necessarily had the same level of review on. So it's probably changed a little bit about that focus around probably more the hydrocarbon issue coming from the mining service industry to a change in tack there. So we continue to look at it, but we believe it's probably a combination of commercial operators that are putting small amounts in that having impact.
A follow-on question?
Certainly.
And so we have the ability or technology, whatever, to trace to a certain extent, but I believe it might be time critical. Is like getting back to the original source now would be difficult, or is it something that they're ready to do if it comes up again?
Might be confusing the water system, which we have a very good ability to trace. I don't know whether we can do exactly the same thing in the waste system.
Yeah, through Your Worship. It depends on the classification on how it's classified as generators. So if you're a category 3 generator, we will go and sample regularly, and they need to supply samples so you can actually measure those. So it would depend on the circumstances. If you're considered a low risk, low volume generator, we might actually be taking samples. So we've been going actively sampling more now to re-establish that. And I might have to have a look at the framework on how we actually categorise the different levels based on a slightly different risk profile as well. So we're working through that process, but we should be able to trace those contaminants down to individual generators.
Thank you.
Great. Councillor Dillon?
No, it's been answered, thank you.
Oh, right, okay. Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just back to the leak detection, the My H2O shows that we've sent out 6,082 notifications to residents, but there's still 1,473, if you add them all up, notifications that are sent that are not signed up. And I know previously I've asked and said, well, potentially that could be some people that are renting, so they're not signed up for My H2O. And I know that you know, landlords can permit a tenant to be able to sign up, which is great. But what I wanted to know was, being that we've got 1,473 that we've had to send an SMS, a letter, or an email to, that takes up staff time, and I'm wondering whether or not you know, a targeted campaign on those 1,473 people could be done to try and make it less and less and less, and eventually we don't have to waste staff time on doing that because they're hooked to My H2O.
We've had several campaigns to try and get everybody on My H2O, and it has some degree of success. Where are we at with all of that now, Director?
Yeah, thank you, English. We would certainly love the council to have everyone signed up and be able to automatically send it out. If you're on the My H2O portal, you'll get every 3 days, we'll send you an update until the leak's obviously repaired. For those that aren't on, it's normally a letter depending on what data we have, and will go out monthly. So obviously a requirement to get any access to any release, and the release requires you to sign up to the My H2O portal, so we're trying to get that, but we probably need to go back and have a review about how we can obviously look at some further options, whether that's, we've met with the library staff to try and have them run a campaign a little bit to try and get people to be able to sign up. So we'll continue to look at that. It's probably an appropriate time to go back to the rental agencies and trying to get, encourage more people and renters to be able to sign up as well. So, but it has been a continual battle. We seem to have got to a point where there was significant interest, and now it's, hard work to get more residents to sign up.
Maybe, Director, you could bring at some stage in the future a briefing to the council about all of those issues, so that we might be able to solutionise that at that stage. Further questions?
Thank you, Your Worship.
No further questions. Somebody like to move the report's adoption, please? Councillor Hassan moves, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Worship. Well, as the Director alluded to, we've had some huge rainfalls to start the year, which all means that all of our water catchments, including Dumbleton, Moroney and Marion, is all at 100% capacity. So accordingly, water usage for the months was down on previous month, and we've seen that the first month since June last year that all of our communities remain below our water consumption target of 200 litres per day. Unfortunately, as the Director also alluded to, increased rainfall can also increase the issues that we see in our water delivery. Residents in Midge Point have experienced ongoing problems in past weeks, and I'd just like to assure people living in that area that Council is working hard to address those issues and get their water supply back to normal. Kamala also has experienced hard water issues, and in the report those hard water results were higher than normal, but this should be improved with the installation of their water softening plant at Kamala, which that work is due to be completed by the end of the year. I'd just like to say that, as always, the Water Services team is a huge team, and they're always extremely busy and carry out a really impressive amount of testing across the region on our water. Constant testing is undertaken to ensure that we continue to have some of the best drinking water in the world. We have trade waste being assessed and monitored constantly, wastewater testing, which is picking up COVID fragments, ensuring that our community is aware. Plumbing applications are processed and water leaks are detected and reported back. So all of these occur with the absolute best focus possible on customer service, and the high level of positive feedback received from the community is testament to that.
Thanks, Councillor Hassan. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bella.
I'd like to speak on the water supply issue. I'd just like to make a point to anyone that's listening that there is a difference between the safety parameters in the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines and the aesthetics. And a couple of years ago we had the problem in Eton where we found uranium, which was still well within the safety parameters. That kind of got, morphed into a whole aesthetic thing with the hardness of the water. At no point was there anywhere other than Kamala that had the hardest water in our region. We were to do both treatment plants. For economic reasons, it was decided to do Eton first, and I'm very glad that despite various issues, native title and things like that, that we finally got around to moving on the water supply in Kamala. There is no doubt whatsoever that it has been needed for a very long time. What we've got to realise too is these hardness scores, even though they're well over the aesthetic parameters, and that does have huge impact on things such as hot water systems and various other household appliances, but their general level, while it doesn't reach these high levels that are displayed here, is very, very high. So I'm very pleased that by the end of 2021, it's something that I've pushed quite hard for the last couple of years. Very glad to see that it will be implemented.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Jones speaking for.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to thank the staff for prioritising the works for Midge Point. I know it's been previously mentioned. I know that it's been a difficult system to try and rectify over the years due to its distance from major infrastructure. Our officers have trialled a number of ways to end up with better water quality for our residents out there, but it's hoped that the changes to Kelsey Creek chlorination facility, the planned scouring of the trunk main, the design works to introduce an aeration system, plus the 1.2 kilometre return pipe from the reservoir to the trunk main will solve these problems. So hopefully it'll all resolve itself.
We all hope so, Councillor Jones. Okay, are there any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.3.4 is the contractual arrangement tendering exemption for the Mackay North Water Recycling Facility. Director, do you want to say anything about this? Director, do you want to say something on this report?
Just briefly. So obviously with the Mackay South and Mackay North plants coming back in-house, we probably had an issue with the screens needing to be replaced. We made a decision last year to do the paperwork's cleaning out the SBRs, so we need to obviously upgrade the screens to prevent material hitting the SBRs and impacting that process. And given that we want consistency across our screens, across the two plants, instead of going to a sole supplier, the market price has been tested and lines up, so we're happy to supply this recommendation.
Okay. Are there questions? No questions? Somebody like to move the reports of adoption? Councillor May moves, Councillor Mann seconds, Councillor May.
That's explains the fashion, please.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously, thank you. 11.4.1, we're in org services now for the review for the month of January, and we have an acting director of org services. Acting director, welcome.
Good morning, Your Worship, and thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to present the Organisational Services Review for the month of January on behalf of the Director, Kylie Lamb. In the report, you'll see that once again the focus of the Department on safety has been quite successful with no LTIs reported since 2017-18 financial year. Some of the highlights over the past month is congratulations to our governance and safety officers for the completion of the Contract Safety Management Project, which became operational in January this year following 12 months of development. Awareness of this was raised after doing business council briefings and is included as part of the contracting documentation. The aim of the project is to achieve comparative levels of safety between both council and contractor activities. The customer service team continues to deliver high customer satisfaction ratings. In the month of January, 97% of completed surveys indicated that our external customers were satisfied with the service provided. On the matter of customer requests, and also referencing back to the Waste Services Department report, 3 of the top 5 pathway requests lodged by customers relate to wheelie bins, and it constitutes 20% of all of our requests in the month of January. It's pleasing to note that over $7 million was injected in our businesses in our region through our procurement activities, and this represented 73% of our January spend. In January, 8,529 people attended the Mackay Aquatic Recreation Complex in January, and it was also exciting to see that we had the elite swimmers from the St. Peter's Western Swimming Club from Brisbane who used the centre for their pre-season training. In the last report, we referred to the recruitment of the 2021 Apprentice and Trainee intake, which is now complete. Offers have been made, are in the process of being accepted for induction and onboarding in March this year. A reminder, we received over 250 applications for those roles. Our 12-month rolling average for staff turnover is sitting at 13.61%, which compared to a rate of 16% 12 months ago. And finally, the management of the volunteers continues to improve through a centralised volunteer database. And additionally, there is work being conducted with the communications and marketing staff on the campaign for volunteering with Council in 2021.
Thank you very much, Acting Director. Are there questions? No, Director Lamb never gets any questions either, so we thought we might throw a few at you this time. But thank you very much. Would somebody like to move the reports of adoption? Councillor Bella moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Bella.
I'd like to drag out of this report the pool attendances. And to be honest, there's no point in having an asset that no one uses. So through December and January, hottest months of the year, apart from this year where there's February as well, we saw a drop in usage of all pools except our mark, where we saw an increase of 50%. And in actual fact, that increase actually was enough to cover and more the decrease in the other pools by 323 attendances. Very, very pleasing to see that it's like a new asset like that is being used. I would wonder whether some of those attendances were, during school holidays, parents going for a trip to town and thus using the facilities we have in Mackay. And it's interesting to note that if that were the case, with Canelands just up the road, the pool of choice was the Mark. So interesting. While it's not smack bang where you'd think that people would go for their day in town to do their shopping, it's still a very, very, very high attraction for many people.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Speaker against? Any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. The operational plan quarterly report for the second quarter at 11.4.2, CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Very pleased to provide this report. So it highlights a lot of good work staff are doing, particularly in a year of uncertainty. So There are a lot of highlights in there. I'll probably just pull out three. One is the focus on safety, and it's good that there's been discussion and councils have raised safety again today. The wide variety of work that council does means that it's a constant continuing focus, and it's really hard to manage and eliminate all injuries, although that is certainly our target, particularly when you've got heroic staff saving small dogs and getting dog bites and things like that. That makes that very difficult. The other things that I'll sort of point out is the MEC. We had our first big face-to-face MEC event again, which is really exciting, given maybe you can see a return to normality in some shape or form happening there. And I'll also point out the great work, particularly that our water staff have done with the water industry worker pilot program, which took our state award there. In relation to the KPIs, overall we've done well. There are about 11 though that we're not hitting the KPI targets that have been set. Of those, there's probably one, the design guideline, which probably doesn't make sense given at the PDA waterfront what we're doing there. We're certainly prioritising the EOIs and some of the other work, so it probably doesn't make sense that continues as a target. Of the other KPIs that we haven't met, 3 have been where we've exceeded statutory or other targets. So, for example, there was a late DA sort of turnaround, so we've got to keep an eye and improve on those things. But they were sort of one-off, and we hope that they won't happen into the future. There are 4 people in culture KPIs that we're missing. A lot of that is because we're putting a fair bit more work into that people and culture space. And one of the things, or a couple of things that we're doing is that we'll be launching a staff engagement survey and process going forward, and we're also in the process of giving a number of our staff 360 feedbacks, and we're going to take both of those inputs into our values rollout and some of those behavioural things that we're doing in that people and culture space. So while we're behind on those targets, I think we're coming at it in a much more robust way. So we'll keep council informed on that. In terms of other KPIs, there's 3 there that we're just behind that we see that we'll be catching up on over the course of the coming months. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, CEO. Good report. Are there questions for the CEO? Councillor Mann.
So I've just noted in terms of the Conservation Management Plan and Asset Management Plan for Greenman Homestead, the reason that we're behind in the action is that we're waiting on heritage expertise from strategic planning. I just wonder if we currently have that heritage expertise in strategic planning.
CEO.
I'll pass that one across to you.
Yeah.
Director.
Thank you, Worship. Generally, strategic planning help asset owners by seeking advice from the Heritage Council or referring them to the correct types of experts that can provide that assistance rather than providing that technical assistance themselves. I'm not sure of the exact nature of the assistance that's being provided by strategic planning in this situation, but I can find out. But generally, it's more a sort of liaison referral, pointing people in the right direction type thing.
Okay. Further questions? No further questions for the report? Well done. Good report. Thank you very much. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Englert moves. Councillor May seconds. Councillor Englert.
Thank you, Worship. 94 actions on target, 11 complete, 11 below target. The CEO and Director have explained to some extent, reasons for that, but going through the report in all, very reasonable explanations, rational, everything from, as the Councillor Mann just mentioned, to additional rollouts, postponing due to reprioritisation and legislative timeframes. It's a good report. Everything's explained very well, and we can see where we're at and why we're there.
Thanks very much, Councillor Englert. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? Councillor May, speaking for.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This is a good point. We're halfway through the year to stop and reflect on what we've been able to achieve. When you have an organisation with 1,200 odd employees, over 5 different departments, it's very hard to condense that into a report that is presentable. But I would draw the community's attention to the first 4 pages of the report that really gives a snapshot of the activities over the last quarter, and the next part around what we haven't met our targets on I think the most alarming one to me is around the capital program, but that's also been addressed in the actions that the officers are going to take to rectify that in the next quarter and the following quarter. So I think overall fantastic achievements to date so far. Congratulations to all the directors, the CEO and the staff on being able to present the report today.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor May. Any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Adoption of council policies, 11.4.3. Councillors, we have 3 policies that have been circulated as part of this agenda. So 46, the information privacy policy, 36, the library public internet and computer use policy, and 44, the accessible communities policies. Are there any questions? Really well straightforward. We've had some briefings on all of this, so would somebody like to move then the policy adoption? Councillor Green moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Green.
As you said, it's straightforward. We've been briefed well on this, so.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.4.4, the Belcarra Stage 2 reforms. These are legislative delegation amendments. So this is to enable us to adopt the new register of delegations under Belcarra. CEO, is there anything further that you need to say on this?
I don't think so. Self-explanatory.
Yep.
Happy to take questions.
Are there any questions around this? Okay. Somebody like to move the report be adopted? Councillor Hassan moves. Councillor May seconds. Councillor Hassan. Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. There's no petitions to receive today. There's no tenders to consider. There's no notified motions today. Public participation. We have some members of the public with us today. Thank you very much. Mr. Rod Watt is registered to talk about the Piney Valley Men's Shed in the Morandi Heritage Centre precinct. Right, where are you? Yes. Now the rules of engagement are that you have 3 minutes. This is purely for you to address the council. It is not an interactive session. And if there is any requirement to follow up afterwards, we'll pass that on to the CEO. So 3 minutes are yours, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here I'm a member of the Piney Valley Men's Shed. The reason here today is to, first up, I'll just give a broad outline of where the men's shed is at. And as Peter probably put in a report to council about some concerns related with the development of the heritage situation at Morandi there. But first up, we have approximately 22 members at the present time. We feel that once we get a shed in place, those numbers will double immediately, because we've had numerous people inquiring about where we're at with the men's shed and wishing to attend. Now, we've sort of gauged through the community any opportunity to find a temporary place, but that hasn't been successful. The area we actually cover runs from Walston, Finchatten, and Cuttable across to Eden. That's a vast area, and in those major towns, there's numerous retiree farmers, miners, mill workers, graziers, etc. Up the valley, we find that the men's sheds in Mackay are just too far away for, say, somebody from a town like Gargett. It is also our intention, once we get this men's shed in place, to include women on alternate days to when the men are using the shed. We also have, at the present time, some women who actually attend our general meetings. But until we actually get a shed, our activities are very limited. We have a considerable amount of equipment which is at present in storage. That regards lathes, saws, timber, electrical equipment, and so forth. As indicated to the council in Mr. Sheedy's letter, we are concerned about the shed size of the shed that was indicated for Morandi for the Piney Valley Men's Shed. Because, as we know, the men's shed at Serena and the men's shed at Seaford have found that they need to extend because of the shed size. Now, one of the concerns is if we go ahead with this small shed at Morani, we could be limited on that block for any expansion in the future. Could be limited by the size of the block, could be limited by the position of the shed and so forth, of access and so forth, and footpaths and the actual size of the block. We wish to have further discussion with council, the council representatives, in regards to the marine situation. We're much appreciative of council and any council help we can receive, but we would like to have further discussion with council with the marine situation.
Mr. Watt, thank you. About 3.5 minutes now, so we'll let the CEO follow up with that further interaction, and the CEO will establish a communication so that you can talk further. Thanks very much for your contribution. Mr. Peter Sheedy is here with us today, and Peter, welcome. You're also speaking about the Bunny Valley Initiative.
Yeah, morning. Thanks, Mayor Greg and councillors. The Pioneer Valley Men's Shed was formed during 2020 after an initial meeting at Melba House, and it was there that we sort of learnt that one of the guys who was involved with Rotary heard that the council had a plan to do something at and we arranged, through conversation with CEO Craig, he came and addressed members and sort of told them about the plans for the Morani Heritage Precinct sort of thing, that things were happening out there, and that they'd applied for funding, for planning, and eventually for construction. That the proposal was that there would be about $500,000 on planning and about $5 million for construction to finish it all off at Morani. And we want to thank council for considering the men's shed as part of that activity, and it certainly sounds as though it had good prospects, and thanks for that. So we proceeded with incorporation so that we had a body to represent to the members, and to be able to sort of have a seat at the table when the consultation process got underway. On the 25th of November, I sent an email to Mayor Greg because it had been a few months since we spoke, and the reply by phone was very encouraging because it indicated that the council had only just committed to the planning process, and that there would be consultation with stakeholders, and we weren't the only stakeholders, so we appreciate that, but we're looking forward to getting on with the consultation process. And the idea then was as well that staff would be appointed to the task, and under the leadership of the strategic planning manager, and the idea was about the consultation to take place, and we look forward to getting on with that. But then last Wednesday, I made contact with Mr. Ackerman to inquire where things were at, and he sort of indicated that they're pretty well advanced with planning, and it needed to be approved by council before there'd be further consultation with the stakeholders. And I guess that when I got home and thought about that, I was really concerned about what was really happening, because it was quite different to what we were given to understand was going to happen. So, the concern is that council's committing funds to this project, and taxpayer funds are being committed to it, and that if we get the planning wrong, if there's a bit of a mismatch of what it's all about, well, the Pioneer Valley is going to be the losers, and ratepayers and taxpayers. You know, it's not going to be good.
And I think we've gone well over 3 minutes, so I understand where you're coming from. Well, once again, we'll get the CEO to establish a face-to-face communication, and we can bring the membership and our planning and via the CEO up to date as to where we are.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Diane Vella. Diane, it's good to see you. Welcome. You know the rules of engagement, 3 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the councillors and staff who attended the meeting at the Tidal Gates, and in particular to those people who attended at the beach. In the council meeting conducted on the 27th of January 2021, I watched with interest the debate among several councillors in relation to a development application. Councillor Englert stated that we need people to make this work, referring to the engineering and other department heads. Another statement that supposition must not come into it. While these are both fair statements, the third statement about sitting on the road is unnecessary, as once a decision becomes final, it does not matter how much he sits on the road, it will not change the decision if it is not correct. This brought back memories of a council development known as Bennington Sands final stage. On the 29th of the 5th, 2000, petition against development from residents. 30th of the 5th Council approved development of 75 house allotments. The proposed drain was to go from the Kilgore Drain to Atkinson Street. There was no cover to stop water entering the middle of the street, which is lower. 17th of the 11th, 2000, flood covers development area. After this event, 26 house allotments were removed. The area was built up 1 metre higher than the lower areas. Did the planning department get it wrong? In my opinion, yes. We were told if the development did not go ahead, the council will have to compensate the developer. What about the residents who then flooded and had to pay increased insurance? Compensation would not have been necessary if the engineers had done the proper hydraulic studies. 2009, Point Glen did an engineering study, and it was discovered that Bennington Sands in their development of the area had blocked 81.2% of water from going out to sea. This increased the flooding in 2008. How were the engineers not liable for their mistakes? Had it not been for the flood in November 2000 and the removal of the 26 house blocks, the tidal gates would not have been able to be put in place. The residents would have borne the brunt of this poor decision. How did the planning department get it so wrong? Before this development was finished, I made several statements that we would have a flooding in the area once this development went ahead, that council would not be able to maintain the area during wet seasons, and that someone would be hurt on the walkway. All of these things have come to pass and could be considered supposition. So sometimes supposition can be more correct than some of the engineering. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Well done. That's 2.5 minutes. You had another 30 seconds.
No, I timed it just nicely.
And Dorothy Woolridge. Dorothy, it's lovely to see you.
Good morning, everyone. I've come to finish my 3 minutes. 3 minutes. You yourself state we live on a floodplain, so in my opinion, drainage should be top priority. The Queensland State Government say drainage must be Q100, but council tells me none in Mackay can meet this standard. Ours is only Q5. I feel the large area of households which pay rates in East, South and West Mackay is able to maintain Shelgrid Creek, as it is one drain already draining to the sea. So then we may be able to have lower insurance. As head of disaster, where have you built our evacuation centres? None this side, and thanks to a sheep the other side of the world, one was established at Northern Beaches, but only accommodates 700 people. Considering Mackay has more than 100,000 people living here, this will probably cause panic if we ever need it to be used. Your advice is to go to family and friends, but once again, some elderly don't have any or have no way of travelling. It would be comforting to know we have a plan in place for the people that need help if the part of Mackay that will flood very quickly in the rain season and can lose their life, and not wait until this happens before improving maintenance to make sure it has a better chance of not happening. After a long time complaining, I felt the previous mayor was reaching a solution to this, but under your rule, feel nothing will be done till it is too late. Your 3 minutes in public consultation with no answer to this problem shows how little respect you have for our community. I know this has nothing to do with drainage, but while here, I must say, to deny the elderly the entertainment centre for morning melodies was, in my opinion, a low blow. Thank you for listening, and I know nothing will be done. And I also wish to tell my thanks to the councillors on my invitation came down in a hot summer day to show that they do care what the community is going through.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Waldridge. Okay, there's no further public, there's no further public participation, I don't think. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on. Late business. Councillor Mann, please.
Thank you, Worship. So today is Teal Ribbon Day and February is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, with the aim to raise awareness of the signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer, to share the stories of real women affected by the disease, to highlight the risk factors for ovarian cancer, and to educate Australians on ovarian cancer diagnosis and treatment. And I'm sure most people would be very well aware of the late Trudy Crowley, who publicly and openly shared her story and created a lasting legacy with the nude lunch and the formation of the Trudy Crowley Foundation. This foundation employs nurse Rosie Stannard to offer on-the-ground support to women and their families affected by this cancer and other cancers. So they don't just make it ovarian cancer only, they offer valuable support right around the region. And our own staff member, Regine Doherty, is currently being treated for ovarian cancer, and she has become an ambassador for the Trudy Crowley Foundation, and she delivers very powerful educational talks around the region when she's well enough to do so. Regine was diagnosed in December 2019, and it's recently received the news that she's now stage 4. With survival rates generally at 5 years or less, ovarian cancer is often described as a silent and sneaky cancer. It does not respect age, with the youngest person diagnosed at 9 and the oldest at 83, and both of those in our region. My thoughts today are with those who are fighting this disease and those who have succumbed to it, and I hope a research breakthrough will see more women surviving past 5 years.
Thanks very much, Councillor Mann. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to raise the Online Sports Expo. It's due to finish at the end of February, so I asked the community to hop online and have a look because we're nearing the end of that campaign, and it's been our trial of doing it online due to COVID this time. So yeah, if the community can hop online before the end of February, that would be wonderful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I just wanted to bring attention to today is the 60th birthday of the Cancer Council Queensland, and yourself and I were in attendance at the luncheon yesterday where that was celebrated. I really just want to draw attention to the wonderful work that the Cancer Council Queensland does throughout the state of Queensland in assisting patients, family members and carers in their journey through cancer. That they also provide transport, not just from the airport to the accommodation, but from accommodation to your appointments and return. And that's a valuable contribution to anybody's care. We heard from a young girl yesterday from a lived experience, and she said how fantastic it was to be at one of the residences where they had the opportunity to talk to one another and share their stories and learn tips around how they manage their treatment. So a great resource. The other part of the Cancer Council Queensland is also the research aspect of it, and they have done an enormous amount of work in trying to research treatments for cancer over the past 60 years. So they're strong and they're healthy and they're continuing on that journey. So happy birthday, Cancer Queensland.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor May. Any further late business? Councillor Green.
Yes, so last night we held the first Northern Beaches Community Hub Reference Group meeting, and I must say it was a great meeting. The depth and the diversity of the members that has been put together was fantastic. We've got people that have lived there most of their lives. Some are new to the area, but we have a homeschooling mother, we have immigrants, we have men, we have women, we have a great cross section, and also there's the police is there, the high school and primary school are all represented, so we've got a great cross section of that community there. And so already some great ideas are flying around the table. So now it's up to those members and to go out into the community to inform their community of the knowledge that they're gaining from these meetings, and then to get that feedback and to bring that back, and we can take that further, because the key to this community hub being a success is the ownership that the community feels around this. So we encourage everyone to talk about it and to be on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Any further late business? No further late business. There's 3 confidential reports that are standard. 4 confidential reports that are standard. Anybody see the need to close the meeting? Nobody sees the need. Let's deal with the confidential reports then. The Legal Services monthly report for the month of January. Somebody like to move its adoption? Councillor Englert moves. Councillor Townsend seconds. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. 17.2 is the approved concessions under the Facilitating Development in the Mackay Region Policy, January 21. Somebody like to move? Councillor Mann moves. Seconded by Councillor Hassan. Those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Thank you. 17.3, the approved sponsorship under the Mackay Invest Events and Conference Attraction Program for January 21. Moved by Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor Mann. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. 17.4, the draft minutes of the Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program for February. Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, councillors. Thanks, CEO and directors. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the meeting closed.